The NFL draft takes place each and every year, and during the 3-day event in late April, we often hear that we'll know how this class will turn out in about 3 years, and it shouldn't come as a surprise that some draft classes are better than others. And during the pre-draft process, you'll hear the word generational tossed around far too often about prospects, in hopes that the said player will be the best player at his position in a few short years. But speaking from an overall draft class standpoint, it is not an exaggeration to say the 2011 draft class was not just generational, but legendary. It had it all. Each of the first 7 picks in the 2011 draft were Pro Bowlers, and each of the first 6 picks were multiple-time Pro Bowlers. And 5 of the first 6 picks were all first-team All-Pros at some point in their career. This class has a regular season MVP, a Super Bowl MVP, a plural, multiple-time Defensive Player of the Year award winner, 2 receivers with over 10,000 career receiving yards, and not 1, not 2, not 3, but 5 players with over 100 career sacks. And to put it simply, this class had it all. And in today's video, we're going to break down just how legendary the 2011 draft class was. And before we get started, I do want to thank the NFL directly for allowing me to create this video and for allowing me to be a part of the Creator Access Pass. It means a lot and is very humbling, and without further ado, let's begin! And we are starting today's video by discussing the number 1 pick in the draft in Auburn's Cam Newton. Newton was one of the most athletically gifted quarterbacks in NFL history, and he was an incredibly fun player to watch in his prime. He started his NFL career off with back-to-back 420-plus passing yard games, and I remember specifically after the Week 2 game against the Packers in 2011 that a prime Aaron Rodgers, who was on his way to having a 45-6 touchdown interception season, said that Cam would be a problem once he figured out how to win. And in his rookie year, and this is not an exaggeration for the younger audience who may not remember, Cam had over 4,700 yards of total offense and 35 total touchdowns. This was also in a 16-game regular season, and needless to say, at 22 years old, the Panthers had their franchise quarterback. Now, I know the Pro Bowl in 2025 does not have the meaning it once did, but a 4,700 total yard, 35 total touchdown season is definitely a Pro Bowl caliber season, and not surprisingly, Cam also won the Offensive Rookie of the Year award. He had success in each of his next 3 seasons, including another trip to the Pro Bowl in 2013, and in a year where the Panthers went 12-4, Cam had another good season and made the Pro Bowl. Despite losing in the divisional round in 2013, everything came together in 2015 as the Panthers went 15-1, and Cam Newton had 45 total touchdowns, including a 35-10 TD to INT ratio, which was by far the best of his career, and he won the MVP. Unfortunately, the Panthers lost in the Super Bowl to the Broncos, and believe it or not, the number 2 pick in this class in Von Miller was the Super Bowl MVP. We'll get to Von in a minute, but out of the 4 quarterbacks taken in the first round, Cam was by far the best. The other 3 were Jake Locker, who went to the Titans, Blaine Gabbert, who went to the Jags, and Christian Ponder, who went to the Vikings. Cam was everything the Panthers could have hoped for and more as he helped turn a franchise around, and they legitimately felt that anytime Cam was on the field, they had a chance to win. Despite Cam winning an MVP and making multiple Pro Bowls, he actually doesn't have the most passing yards or touchdowns from this class, as that belongs to Andy Dalton. And we'll get to the Bengals 2011 draft class in a minute, but before we do, it's time to go back to Von Miller. Whenever we talk about players in their primes and talk about how they will be a really good player by the time they're in their 3rd or 4th season, that didn't apply to Von Miller. He had 60 pressures and 11.5 sacks as a rookie and was a second-team All-Pro. He had 18.5 sacks in his second season as well as a pick 6 and was a first-team All-Pro. And he finished second in the Defensive Player of the Year voting to, you guessed it, another 2011 draftee in J.J. Watt, who had a downright insane 39 tackles for a loss and 20.5 sacks as he was on his way to his first of 3 DPOYs. Von only played 9 games in 2013, but from 2014 through 2018, he had perfect attendance as he played in all 80 games. He was a 5-time All-Pro with 2 more first-team appearances, had 63 sacks, 14 forced fumbles, and the most important of all, a Super Bowl MVP on what was one of the best defenses of all time. Von's peak was incredible, and the future Hall of Famer is a 7-time All-Pro and has 129.5 career sacks, and for those who may not remember, the pre-draft hype for Von was really high, and anytime you were drafted either 1st or 2nd overall as a pass rusher, you were expected to be a franchise-changing player, and Von Miller was exactly that. Buffalo had the 3rd pick, and they used it on the big fella from Alabama in Marcel Dareus. I personally think Marcel is a player that doesn't get talked about enough for how much of an impact he had on each and every game. He was a really good run defender and even made the Pro Bowl twice during his 9-year career, and was a first-team All-Pro in 2014. He anchored the Bills' defense for the first several years of his career before eventually being traded to the Jags during the 2017 season. Unfortunately for Dareus, he is a part of a legendary draft class that had a lot of productive defensive players, and he also played a position that Aaron Donald played, who entered the NFL when Dareus was in year 4, and defensive tackle is already a position that does not get as much national love as it probably should, and I think these all contribute as to why Dareus isn't discussed as a part of the 2010s probably as much as he should be. He was also in an era with guys like Geno Atkins, Calais Campbell, and Ndamukong Suh, and you get the point. But Dareus was a really good defensive tackle, and there was a reason they signed him to a near $100 million contract extension, which was huge at the time. Now, for the Bengals, they had one of the best draft classes in their franchise's history, as they selected AJ Green and Andy Dalton with the first 2 picks. I know 2020 was obviously with Joe Burrow and T. Higgins, and that's why I said one of the best classes in franchise history. But AJ Green started his career with 7 straight Pro Bowls, and nearly started his career off with 7 straight 1,000-yard seasons, as he had 964 yards in 2016 in just 10 games. I would argue the biggest pitfall for AJ Green in his NFL career was being in the same draft class as Julio Jones, and ultimately having his peak be at the same time as guys like Julio Jones, Des Bryant, Antonio Brown, and even Odell Beckham Jr. What is unfortunate for Adriel Jeremiah is a player selected 2 picks after him was one of the 2 best receivers in the entire decade, but AJ Green finished his career with over 10,000 yards, 2 second-team All-Pros, and 6 1,000-yard seasons. Now, for Andy Dalton, he's still active and just finished his 14th NFL season. Sure, he's bounced around over the past 5 years, as after his time in Cincinnati, he played for the Cowboys, the Bears, even the Saints for a year, and now the Panthers for each of the last 2 seasons. But the Bengals took a chance on Andy Dalton in the second round, and he made 3 Pro Bowls during his time in Cincinnati, and I know Joe Burrow is a much better player than Andy Dalton, obviously, but Andy took the Bengals to the playoffs in each of his first 5 seasons, and had 50 wins in 5 years as their starting quarterback. He wasn't a top 10 pick or a number 1 overall pick, but a guy selected in the second round, and as of now, he's 26th in both passing yards and passing touchdowns all time. I don't think Andy is an all-time player by any means, but I do think his prime is a little underappreciated because he played in the early to mid-2010s with guys like Brady, Manning, Breeze, and Rodgers. But for Cincinnati to draft both Andy Dalton and AJ Green, and even draft an offensive lineman in the 4th round who would go on to start for 7 seasons for them in Clint Bowling, was a tremendous haul for the Cincinnati Bengals. Patrick Peterson was the 5th overall pick, and Pat Pete started his career with 8 straight Pro Bowls and was a member of the 2010s All-Decade team. He was also a very dynamic punt returner early in his career, as he had 4 punt returns for a touchdown in his rookie year, one of which was an overtime game winner against the then St. Louis Rams. Patrick Peterson was one of the best corner prospects we've seen in the past 15 years, and he more than proved the Cardinals right, as he was also a 3-time first-team All-Pro. There was a point where the Cardinals periodically tried to incorporate him into the offense, as he had 6 receptions during the 2013 season and even carried the football a couple of times too. Peterson was a highly sought-after draft prospect, and he was a franchise cornerstone for a long time in the desert. Peterson played for a team that did not have a lot of success outside of the 2015 season, in which they went to the NFC Championship game, and a special shout out to Larry Fitzgerald for the big play in the divisional round against the Packers, but Peterson was undoubtedly one of the best corners from his era, along with fellow NFC West rival Richard Sherman, who was also a part of the 2011 draft class. Richard Sherman didn't play as long as Pat Pete, but his impact was significant as he had a tremendous 4-year stretch between 2012 and 2015, and he is the most known player from Seattle's Legion of Boom. Sherm was a 3-time first-team All-Pro from 2012 to 2014, and was a second-team All-Pro in 2015, and he is most known for his elite football IQ, his trash-talking, and being able to back up the trash-talking, and being one of the biggest tone-setters at the corner position we've seen this century. One of, by the way, not the biggest, as I'm not throwing shade at Darrelle Revis by any means. Sherm had back-to-back 8 interception seasons in 2012 and 2013, and made a play known as the Immaculate Deflection in the 2013 NFC Championship game, which sent Seattle to their first Super Bowl appearance since 2005. There was a point in Sherman's prime where teams didn't even bother throwing his way. He was that good. The Legion of Boom allowed the fewest passing yards in the NFL in 2013, and they absolutely dismantled the Denver Broncos in the Super Bowl with an MVP-winning Peyton Manning, who had just thrown 55 touchdowns with a score of 43-8. There's draft classes that don't have Hall of Famers, and there's draft classes that may only have one Hall of Famer, but it's extremely rare to have two corners in the same class that will probably get inducted in Canton within a few years of this video, and Richard Sherman and Patrick Peterson, to me, are both Hall of Fame players. Now, I'll be honest, as an analyst in their mid-20s, I know Julio Jones' numbers do not compare with the all-time greats, as he's 27th in receptions, 16th in receiving yards, and tied for 61st in touchdowns all time, as touchdowns were always tough for Julio, but to me, he was the definition of a player you had to watch live to truly understand how special he was. Julio had 7 1,000-yard seasons, and these weren't just 1,022 yards in a year where he barely clears the number. No, each of Julio's 1,000-yard seasons were all 1,198 yards or more, and I kind of feel bad for Julio that he couldn't get 2 more yards in 2012 to have 7 1,200-yard seasons, but if you ask any fan that remembers watching him play from the 2012 to 2019 span, he was an animal. The 2015 season between him and Antonio Brown going back and forth was incredibly fun, and in a 16-game season, Julio had 136 receptions for 1,871 yards and 8 touchdowns. He was obviously a first-team All-Pro, and I am not using this video to talk about where he ranks all-time, because again, the numbers do not do Julio justice, but to have 6 seasons of 1,394 yards or more is ridiculous, and Julio also had 5 seasons of 1,400 yards or more. Your best bet in his prime was to double him and hope you could slow him down. A lot of younger people like to use the phrase "I'm him" when they make a play in today's era, but everyone knew it. Julio was him in his prime, and he has one of the best plays that's also unfortunately one of the most forgotten plays in Super Bowl history, and I did not know how to mention that, Falcons fans, so I apologize for bringing that specific game up, but Julio Jones was truly a different beast in his prime. Randall Cobb was a solid receiver for many years for the Packers, as he finished his career with over 7,600 receiving yards and had over 50 touchdowns with a Pro Bowl appearance back in 2014. Torrey Smith was a second-round pick from Maryland and finished 4th in receiving yards in this class, as he had over 5,000 yards and 41 touchdowns. Torrey was a 2-time Super Bowl champion, one with the Ravens in 2012 and one with the Eagles in 2017, and I think there is 2 things Torrey is most known for. His brother unfortunately tragically passing away in September of 2012, the night before a big Week 3 Sunday night game against the Patriots, and Torrey told Coach John Harbaugh he wanted to play, and he went out and had a 6-catch, 127-yard, 2-touchdown performance as Baltimore beat the Patriots 31-30. He is also most known for a flea flicker touchdown from Nick Foles during the 2017 NFC Championship game. Torrey's Eagles beat another player from the 2011 class in the NFC Championship game, who is 5th in this class in receiving yards, in tight end Kyle Rudolph. Rudolph was the most productive tight end from this class, though I do want to shout out Julius Thomas for back-to-back 12-touchdown seasons with the Broncos, and people who had him in fantasy during that time period definitely remember Julius, but Kyle Rudolph finished his career as a 2-time Pro Bowler and actually won the Pro Bowl MVP in 2012 and was a reliable tight end for the Vikings for many years. He is best known for a game-winning touchdown catch against the Saints in the playoffs in the wildcard round in 2019, and for being a very quarterback-friendly target throughout his entire career. There were 2 running backs from this class that were head and shoulders above everyone else, and they were Mark Ingram and DeMarco Murray. Mark Ingram won the Heisman during his time at Alabama and did not have a great start to his career. For reference, he had just 1,605 total yards through the first 3 years. Not rushing yards, but total yards. He had a rare career for a running back where he started out slow but got better over the next several years of his career and eventually had 3 1,000-yard rushing seasons. He is best known for his 2017 season with the Saints, where he and a then-rookie Alvin Kamara had a tremendous year and combined for 25 total touchdowns. He had a really good year with the Ravens in 2019, as he had 15 total touchdowns and his final 1,000-yard year of his career. Ingram finished his career with over 8,100 rushing yards and 65 rushing touchdowns, and this may surprise you, but he actually doesn't have the most rushing touchdowns from this class. That would be Cam Newton with 75. DeMarco Murray was a really fun player for a short time period, as he was a 3-time Pro Bowler and ran for 1,100 yards or more, 3 times in his career. Murray is best known for his insane 2014 season, in which he had over 1,800 yards rushing as well as an additional 400 yards receiving for a 2,200 total yard year, along with 13 total touchdowns. He was a first-team All-Pro, won the Offensive Player of the Year, and finished 3rd in MVP voting, only behind Aaron Rodgers and J.J. Watt. Murray played a single season with the Eagles in 2015 before finishing his career with the Titans in 2016 and 2017. And he actually had a really good year with the Titans in 2016, as he had nearly 1,300 yards and 9 touchdowns, and there was a very brief period in time where there was a running back duo of DeMarco Murray and Derrick Henry. And while Mark Ingram and DeMarco Murray may have never been the best back of their generation, the 2011 class had 2 running backs have over 7,000 career rushing yards, which was more than any class in a 5-year span between 2009 and 2013. This was obviously a legendary class, but where I think it shines most is where games are won, and lost for that matter, and that's in the trenches. And this class has not just 1 or 2, but several players that I think will eventually end up in Canton when it's all said and done. We already discussed Von Miller at length, but it's not just limited to the defensive trenches either, as Dallas offensive tackle Tyron Smith is one of 4 players from this class to be an 8-time Pro Bowler. Tyron Smith was drafted at 20 years old and didn't turn 21 until December of his rookie season, and he was a longtime starter for the Dallas Cowboys and will eventually get put into the Ring of Honor, and I would probably say the Hall of Fame too. He was an 8-time Pro Bowler and a 4-time All-Pro, including 2 first-team All-Pros in 2014 and 2016. I know Tyron missed a few games per year every season, as the last time he played a full season was all the way back in 2015, but he was pretty much everything the Cowboys could have hoped for when they made this pick. And the reality is, if you can draft an 8-time Pro Bowler and have a guy play at least 13 games in every season for 10 straight years the way Tyron did, you are making that pick every single time, period. And for reference, he was the only offensive tackle to make a Pro Bowl from this draft class, despite 5 being selected in the first round. This class was loaded with trench play throughout, and I didn't want to skip over Aldon Smith, who was picked directly before Tyron Smith, and Aldon started his career off with 33.5 sacks in the first 2 years. Aldon was an absolute monster for the 49ers in 2011 and 2012, and he was very easily on a Hall of Fame trajectory through the first 2 years of his career. Unfortunately, he had a lot of off-the-field issues, and that got in the way of him adding from what would have been another 100-sack player in this class had he never been suspended and had he stayed healthy. Aldon had 42 sacks in the first 43 games of his career, and sure, he probably wouldn't have kept that pace up, but he was only 24 years old at the time and very easily could have been an all-time great based on how he played through those first few years. Saints pass rusher Cam Jordan is still kicking, and he's a franchise legend and a guy that as soon as he retires, they should just go ahead and schedule the induction into the Saints Ring of Honor. And obviously Saints fans know how bitter the rivalry is between them and the Falcons, so what I think would be pretty cool for the Saints to do is to bring Cam back for the Falcons-Saints game the following year and induct him into the Ring of Honor at halftime of that said game. I know Cam has taken a step back specifically over the last 2 years, but from 2013 through 2022, so a 10-year span, this was a guy who missed just 2 games and a player who had 106.5 sacks during this time frame, as well as making 8 Pro Bowls. Lifetime, he has 121.5 career sacks and is a 3-time All-Pro. I think prime Cam Jordan gets forgotten about at times, but he was another really good pass rusher from this class. Justin Houston played for several teams towards the end of his career, but there was a couple of years span in Kansas City where he was a really good pass rusher, and despite there being multiple Hall of Fame pass rushers in this class, Justin Houston actually has the most sacks in a single season from this class, as he had 22 back in 2014. 2014 was by far the best year of his career, as his career high in sacks aside from that year was 11, but Houston still made 4 Pro Bowls and had 4 seasons with 10 or more sacks and 3 more with 9 or more sacks. And he, like a lot of other players in this class, was a problem to deal with in his prime. Robert Quinn is another underrated pass rusher from the 2011 class and had 2 18-plus sack seasons as well as 5 double-digit sack seasons. He made 3 Pro Bowls in his career, was a first-team All-Pro in 2013, and had a career-high 19 sacks that year and finished 4th in Defensive Player of the Year voting. Quinn was a really good player for a long time and finished his career with 102 sacks, and Aaron Donald, yes, that Aaron Donald, has credited Robert Quinn with helping him progress as an NFL player and help him refine his technique as a pass rusher once he got to the league. While Ryan Kerrigan didn't quite get to 100 career sacks, he was the 16th pick in the first round from this draft, and I do think he is a forgotten player from this class. Unfortunately, that happens when you play on a losing team like Kerrigan did for a lot of his career, but Kerrigan made 4 Pro Bowls in his day and had 4 seasons with 11 or more sacks, and ultimately finished his career with 95.5. He had a tremendous career, and if we did a draft grades video for the 2011 class, Kerrigan would absolutely receive an A+ grade. It's just unfortunate for him specifically that there's so many great players in this class. And an interior defensive lineman from this draft is actually coming off of a first-team All-Pro season at 35 years old in Cam Hayward, and Cam took a little while to get going, as he didn't make his first career Pro Bowl until he was in year 7 at age 28, but he is now a 7-time Pro Bowler, as well as a 5-time All-Pro with 4 first-team All-Pros. He's played over 200 games for the Steelers, and the best, most complimentary way I think I could describe Cam Hayward is he is by every definition a Pittsburgh Steeler. He's a Hall of Famer, he's a great guy off the field, and he kicks rear ends and takes names later on the field as well. We've talked a lot about high draft picks in this class, and even mentioned Richard Sherman too, who was drafted in the 5th round, but there was also a center in this draft taken in the 6th round that you may have heard of named Jason Kelce. Jason Kelce aged like fine wine as a player, as he made his first Pro Bowl in year 4 in 2014, then missed the Pro Bowl in 2015, then had a combination of either making the Pro Bowl or being named a first-team All-Pro for the remainder of his career from 2016 on. While Kelce does not have the most Pro Bowls in this class, as he has 7, he does have the most first-team All-Pros with 6, which is more impressive than making the Pro Bowl in my personal opinion. Jason has obviously done well for himself outside of football, and good for him by the way, but he should be a first-ballot Hall of Famer when the time comes. I know there were discussions about his position having a hard time getting into the Hall of Fame, but being a 6-time first-team All-Pro is insane, and he was the best center of his era, and he is also one of the biggest draft steals of all time. J.J. Watt dominated the NFL in a way that not a lot of people have, and his peak was truly one of the highest in NFL history. He had a solid rookie season in 2011 and exploded onto the scene in 2012 as he had his first of 2 20-sack seasons and won his first of 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards. J.J. had a 4-year span from 2012 through 2015 where he didn't miss a game and had 190 quarterback hits, 119 tackles for a loss, 69 sacks, and was a 4-time first-team All-Pro. His prime is right up there with any of the all-time greats, and unfortunately he only played in 8 games between 2016 and 2017 before having a 16-sack season along with 7 forced fumbles in 2018 as he made his 5th and final first-team All-Pro. JJ had one good last year with the Cardinals in 2022 as he had walked out on a 12.5 sack season and finished his career with 114.5 sacks, 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards, and will be a Hall of Famer in a few short years. The 2011 class truly had it all, from an MVP number 1 overall pick, to a Super Bowl MVP number 2 overall pick, to a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year award winner, several Hall of Famers throughout the class, and a whole lot of key contributors for that matter too. I've been wanting to do a video on this class for a long time, and I appreciate the NFL's help for making this possible, and if you enjoyed, please like and subscribe, and until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.